call it to order at 8:31. Any changes to the agenda?
Sally, I'd like to add just one thing.
Sure, Bob.
Not necessarily economic development, but this past week, we lost a huge man that did a lot for our community. Jimmy Dixon grew up in Fergus, loved this community, and he did so much for it. A lot of it behind the scenes. He was involved in one of these committees for years, Parks and Rec. He shaped a lot of businesses, obviously not just his own, which moved several times and continued to grow and employ a lot of people. But he also, behind the scenes, helped a lot of other people starting businesses with advice, with financial help. He was a Rotarian for almost his entire life. At the Legion, he was a big supporter. And if there was a veteran that needed something, Jim quietly made sure it happened. So I want to acknowledge the work that Jim Dixon did for our community.
Thanks, Bob. That was a nice tribute. All right. Actually, Neil, I think we had the funeral information for that too, right? But maybe share it with the group offline.
Yeah, I can do that.
Doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any conflicts of interest to declare? All right. Everyone had a chance to review the minutes. Any changes to the minutes from the last meeting? All right. Can we get a motion to approve them? Bob, thank you. Saw another hand. Jim, second. Neil. Anyone opposed? Call that carried then. Minutes approved. I'm rolling right along here. Which takes us to number 5, which is delegations, and we have one today. Jessica Dunbar is joining us from Elements Casino Grand River to give a bit of an industry update on the iGaming initiative and how that impacts our local community. So Jessica, we'll let you take it away.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sally. Thank you very much for having me on here. I was on here maybe over a year ago during COVID times, and we actually shared our COVID policy measures and how we were doing, health and safety at the property, and how we had 0 cases at the property. So thank you for joining me back again. I am local here. I live in Fergus, so worked at this property for well over 10 years. So I do know the ins and outs of this facility and the dynamic in this community. But what I would like to just raise your awareness and get the opportunity to share with you is that there is a movement with the government, and they are opening iGaming across and opening it up basically in all sectors. So obviously, coming from a gaming facility, we support iGaming. We understand that there is a business within that, and we actually will be also having a business within iGaming along with Great Canadian Gaming that I'm a part of. But the way that how the government has released it is what we're just trying to bring awareness to. So we have put this out on our social media. We've been trying to reach out to anybody in the community that's willing to support us, local vendors that obviously have seen business from us, and partnerships that align. We're just reaching out to basically raise awareness and try and get a level playing field in how this will roll out. So to give you a better overview, we're concerned basically that the government is not fully considering the consequences, basically. So it could be cannibalized. There's multiple US cities and European countries actually who have done this open iGaming allotment, and it's flooded the markets with numerous company and businesses that will be advertising. Because of that, most jurisdictions have tethered iGaming sites to land-based facilities. Obviously, this land-based facility here has a different tax rate. We have different regulations and standards that we have from a municipality perspective, and in that partnership that we have. It will be different with iGaming and how that partnership would be aligned. It won't be tethered to any municipality. It won't be tethered to, land-based gaming in that sense. So iGaming is going to launch on April 4th. So right around the corner. And there's an unlimited number of iGaming sites that are allowed to legalize. So completely unlimited. If you remember back when the slots at the racetracks programs began, there was very strict regulations into how many and where they could be. At this point, the iGaming sites are unlimited. And they will not need to be tethered to any land-based facilities whatsoever. So we're talking about international companies that can come in and hold a license and be able to advertise within Ontario. And the most important aspect of this piece of what I'm sharing is that the iGaming sites will have about a 20% provincial tax rate versus our current tax rate, which is approximately about 55% at the land-based gaming properties. So if you can kind of quickly do the math, you can see that it actually is, more inducive to go to the iGaming platform rather than these land-based gaming facilities, because of the overhead, the staffing that we have at the properties, the buildings, all of that inclusive. iGaming is operated wherever it will be operated, mandated by the government, but also at a different tax rate. So I guess, there's a lot of information that I'm throwing at you at this time. I do have a little bit more to kind of go over, but that is pretty much what we're just trying to share with you. Really, what we are asking is that we get a level playing field so that these land-based properties that, have developed within these communities across Ontario have the same similar tax rate. We have the same type of business model that the government sets up with iGaming as it would with us. We don't want to be forced to move our business into an iGaming, because at the end of the day, that's jobs within our community. That is the municipal payments that Center Wellington has been receiving since inception of Elements Grand River, OLG Grand River back in the day. So we really just want to make notice to the government that we want a level playing field. We want the same tax rates. We also have that overhead of the jobs. We did have a third party come in and do an analysis of basically what the changes would be for Grand River specifically. And it could be potentially up to 30 jobs at this property here. And we employ at our max 120 people. So that could be very substantial. And as well as that, obviously 800,000 less payments in the municipality payments that are made throughout the quarter. So we've been hit hard, obviously, with COVID, as everybody in the industry and within the community has been. But it's just a really challenging time for this to be rolling out right now, especially because we just returned many of our employees to work once again after the lockdown measures. So we fell in underneath the the food and beverage restaurants and that, where we had to actually, close our doors, reduce capacities, reduce our business lines, the lines of business, which, affected our team members here in this property at Grand River substantially. So yeah, I guess our discussions are going on. Like I mentioned off the top, we've reached out to local vendors that we have business relationships with here. Any reduction in our business because of all of these iGaming opportunities to be rolling out, the unlimited amount that would be potentially approved. So advertising, marketing, all of that, it is gaming. It is gaming. I'm a part of gaming. I understand that we market, we game, we promote responsible gaming at all times. I think the difference with the iGaming is obviously they'll have those restrictions and regulations, but it will be much more marketed. And we're talking international groups. I think if anybody watched the Olympics, you may have seen some of those commercials coming on throughout the Olympics. And they haven't even rolled it out yet at this time. So it's not opening until April 4th. So we've actually had an opportunity to meet with Sally and Chuck our media VP, he did a presentation along with myself to Sally. We kind of went through all the details, and thankfully she and her team were in support of it. They, as collection of all the chambers across Ontario, wrote a letter, to forwarded it to the government on behalf of saying, like, please review this. Let's look at this. It's fine. We do support it, but we need to make sure it's done correctly rather than just very quickly opening it up to all and any amounts. So thank you for that, Sally. That was fantastic that you were able to support us in that initiative. We have reached out to local, MPs and obviously anyone within the community that would be willing to lend an ear. We've reached out to our team members and our staff to be able to ask them. There is a website to go on. I guess that's the most important piece that I should get to. There is a website link. It is www.pushpause.ca. And it takes you to basically a screen that allows you to create a message if you would like to support it, and or use one of the suggested ones that are within there. It really is just a sign to be able to have the government listen, hear our concerns, and have that opportunity in trying to save some of the municipal dollars that come to the community and some of the jobs that are at Elements Grand River here in Elora. So that was a lot of talking on my behalf. I tend to do that when I get the chance. I'm sorry. But do you guys have any questions for me? Yeah,
Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jessica. And I know that some of the mayors are getting together in the group and trying to lobby the provincial government as well. So I know Mayor Krantz from is kind of leading the charge on that. So this is important for economic development because of our OLG policy here at Center Wellington. So 88% of OLG funds go to infrastructure projects, 5% go to fund arts, culture, and heritage, and then the remaining funds have been directed by council to go to economic development. So my question is, OLG and has kind of moved into online gaming before. Is there evidence to suggest that people will choose an online experience versus an in-person experience based on what's happened in the past? Because if that's the case, then we potentially have something that we have to be pretty concerned about.
So the rough number is 30% of our business could be lost generally to online gaming. I think with COVID and the closures and the lockdowns did have and produce OLG with the highest online gaming numbers that they've ever seen. So there was obviously a shift to those regular, people that like to game going on to an online version. We are starting to see some of that business return to the land-based properties. And really my focus here at Grand River and the property is to, showcase it, to put it like we are here, bricks and mortar. We have friendly staff, we have RG initiatives, we have restaurants, we have all of these partnerships at the property and the site. I mean, I can't go without acknowledging the Grandway and our partnership there with Grass. We do have a great place up here to come and visit and spend your entertainment dollars. So our package that we can provide to the community is a fantastic one. There is discussion about demographic and who is more likely to go onto an online gaming site rather than a land-based. So, I mean, as the years move on, I think there's a greater chance moving forward, through the decades that we may see more of an increase onto that online gaming platform rather than current at this point. But yes, up until next year, 30% is the opportunity in business loss.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. Just to put that into perspective, the township pre-COVID was receiving anywhere from 2.4 to 2.7 million in OLG funds per year. It obviously dipped for the last 2 years due to COVID. So a 30% reduction would be somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000 reduction in OLG funds to the township every year.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Yeah, That's correct with the numbers that I have as well.
I saw Bob first, so go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I guess it frustrates me, first of all, because it's not that many years ago that the provincial governments had ownership of all these casinos. So it's almost like negotiating in bad faith. Oh, we're going to get out of this because we know iGaming's coming. So we're going to sell our physical assets for huge profits and then turn around and let everybody into iGaming. So that's my first rant. Second, I think, as you said, you're not going to change this. You're not going to stop iGaming. Everybody's on a computer. If we can control it, keep it local, keep it provincial companies, and then change the tax base, or in fact, show the shortfall. You know, if this is 20% brand new revenue for the provincial government, I think the mayors and people like our community should be asking for what it's doing to us, either have them reinvest back in our communities, the things that we were spending money on. So I don't have anything else to add other than try and level the playing field, as you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you, Bob.
Neil?
Yeah, this has huge implications to host communities that have fought the battles and allowed physical raceways and casinos into their municipality. And we are, for lack of a better word, reliant on the revenue that comes from you. This committee has purchased a business park largely based on the money that comes from the casino to make those payments. So this has huge repercussions in our community. Mm-hmm. So, we'll have talks offline with Kelly, myself, and Dan, and how we can support you in this. And my question to you then is, you are doing some online stuff through your casino, so you're going to try and tap into that.
We will, yes. So
it won't be enough to offset what you're losing?
Honestly, with the competition and the numbers of an unlimited amount of online gaming, it's going to be a very competitive market for iGaming. So we will be, adding that to our, business model. We are going to have iGaming, which, that link between iGaming and the land-based property and the bricks and mortar at the property. We want to do everything we can to be able to provide every option that anybody who wants to game can, and motivate with the marketing piece that we would have. But yes, I mean, it's going to be very competitive, and we don't have an answer as to, what the difference is going to be there.
Right. So, and, Bob stole my first rant, because I think we're all kind of caught off guard by this. Any municipality who's agreed to be the host to this, and then have it changed and go online and have the revenue stream altered, that was a bit of a slap in the face to all of us. So we have some legwork to do on this to see if we can't make it a better scenario for everybody.
Thank you.
Bob, and then George.
Jessica, if these people only pay 20% tax and obviously have very little overhead, other than a couple of IT guys continually improving this thing, can they change the percentage they give back in terms of winnings to make it so popular that it steals even more share? Meaning, you obviously have a percentage that goes back to winners. Can they change that algorithm to make their business look incredibly attractive to gamblers?
So I mean, the one piece with this is everybody will be regulated by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. So they do have to get that license through that, and it is monitored through that, which there will be the limits based on, the return back to guests, because it is run and regulated by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. So there is that. But
it will be the same percentage of what land-based casinos are giving?
I honestly don't have that answer at this time.
Yeah. Thanks.
George, and then back to Mayor Kelly.
I'm not muted.
Oh,
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Has there been any response to the letter submitted on February the 11th to the Minister of the Attorney General, as well as the Premier?
I met with, or I don't know if that's for you, Sally, or myself, but I met with Chuck last night, who has been, basically spearheading this initiative across Great Canadian, and he hasn't received a response at this time.
Kelly, did I see a hand?
Yeah, my suggestion is this group does a motion, puts forward a motion to have me do a delegation at the Good Roads convention coming up in April to talk about this. So, and I think that's the best we can do. And if there's a motion that comes from this group that kind of gives me, I do it anyway, but if it comes from this group, I think that gets it on record. And then we'll make sure, I'll work with Dan and we'll make sure that we ask for a delegation. Maybe we can get it sooner than Roma, but for sure for that, talking to the right ministers at that conference and make sure that they know how much we depend on OLJ funds to rebuild our infrastructure. And then the second thing is based on our policy to drive economic development. So I think those are the two items that I'd like to bring up to the minister. And I think if we get a motion on the table for that, it gives me the ability to start that.
Great suggestion. Does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make it.
Thanks, Neil. Christelle, is that a seconder? Thank you. Anyone opposed to that, making the motion for Kelly to make that delegation? All right, we'll call that one carried. Any other questions for Jessica before we let her get on with her day? Janet.
A comment, and excuse me if it's a bit of a naive comment because I don't know the background workings of OLG, but and elements, but the difference in the taxation rate between what you currently pay and some of the online component, is there any way of tracking IP addresses to the local communities and then a portion of that fund coming back to the municipality? Again, maybe a naive comment, but just to be able to level the playing fields and to recognize physically where these people actually live.
So that we did bring that up as a question. It'll be across Ontario. You get to go online as long as you're within Ontario, and it will not be traced back to the local communities from that online gaming option.
Mm.
Yeah.
Good question, Janet.
Yeah.
But it could be a Russian site.
It is unlimited that anybody can ask for an application, and there's no set amount that will be approved by how many are going to be allowed.
Even if the address, the IP address pops up in Ontario, Bob, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Russian site.
Jessica, is there any transparency to that application and approval process? Like, do you guys have an understanding of what is going to get approved and what isn't?
I had a brief overview of it when it was first rolling out, just like all of the application pieces. I haven't investigated it lately myself. We do have an iGaming basically lead within Great Canadian who is going through that whole process and looking at all of those details right now.
So your move to iGaming is at the Great Canadian, like sort of three
Corporate.
layers up from Elements, Casino
Correct.
Grand River.
Yeah, the corporate level.
Which
Across
then
Canada.
cannibalizes some of your land-based business, obviously. All right, any other questions for Jessica? I always just find every time I hear her talk about this, I'm mind blown for a few minutes, but. Okay, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate the presentation, appreciate your perspective. Glad we got a motion on the table. That was good. We'll stay in touch.
That is wonderful. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your questions. It's great. And very much appreciated for coming on this morning. So thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Still mind blown, but we'll move on to, there are no reports to consider, so that takes us to working group updates. Business park strategy. George, is that you? You are muted.
Thought I unmuted
There
myself,
you
sorry.
go.
Thank you, Sally. Very quickly, we have a subcommittee meeting this afternoon, but at our last meeting in February, we discussed a number of different items. The first item was the Dixon Drive extension that council did approve on February the 28th this week. There were 5 options presented in the report done by Triton, and they approved the option 1, which was a $3.6 million option to allow for the Dixon Drive extension. Design work detailed design work should be forthcoming in hopefully May, June of this year. And that option will allow also a cul-de-sac as well as stormwater management below grade, curb and gutter, all of the above. So it is the preferred option. Secondly, we talked at the last subcommittee meeting about a business park sign, both temporary and permanent. On the temporary side, we're presenting some mock-up designs this afternoon, and then we'll be working towards a proper tender for the permanent signs as we move forward on the business park. I continue to work on the land purchaser evaluation matrix. My numbers keep rising. My report says 26, you'll see later on. I'm up to 28, and I think I got a 29 that came in last night through the mayor. So there are a lot of inquiries on the business park. And last but not least, we'll be probably reviewing the 2019 CIP priority sites. There is a list of them, and we have to consider if, which ones have been developed and not developed, and are there other criteria to look at some new ones. So these are 4 items that came out of the last business park strategy working group.
Thanks, George. Any questions for George on the business park working group update? Kelly?
Yeah, thanks, Sally. George mentions 4 things, and he says them pretty quickly, but each of those 4 things take a lot of time. So it's really good, and they're substantial items. And so I just want to thank George for continuing to push on all these items. They're very strategic and very important. And thanks for kind of keeping this moving, George. Looking forward to our subcommittee meeting this afternoon, because I really do want to talk about our timelines. We don't have to get into that today, but I want us to have a real good discussion this afternoon about timelines and what we can do to speed it up, obviously. But thanks, George, for keeping the ball moving on this. Very, very strategic initiatives that we're doing. It's great to see the numbers rising for the business park, and it's exactly what we have to do, and it's good to see this happening. That's it.
Thanks, Kelly. George, go ahead. You're still muted.
It says it's unmuted. It changed. My apologies. Thank you, Mayor Linton, as well, because and members of council. This is a strategic investment that council has made. This is value added that's important. It balances out the assessment base. We can't always be residential dominated, and we need to balance out the commercial and industrial assessment. So this was a strategic investment that council thought about, and the Economic Development Task Force to get it to this level. So there, as the mayor's pointed out, there's a lot of moving parts. We're going to keep moving forward to the best of our ability. So, thank you.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Sorry, I'm trying to talk less, but I don't know what it is. I just want to thank Bob, and Don's not on the call, but Bob for jumping on our council call this week. It was a split decision at council to move ahead on this, and it's the first time we've had a split decision on economic development related and anything related to the business park. So I don't love to see that, but the support of this group is so critical to get these things through. And so appreciate Bob, you jumping on that call and making sure that you hear the nature of the discussion, because it's these things, these things are not always easy to pass. And if you heard the discussion, you can see that we did have to get past a few hurdles. So thanks to this group for continuing to support what we're doing when it comes to jobs and investment here, because I don't take it for granted.
Thanks, guys. Okay, nothing else on the business park at this point. Probably talk about it a little more in George's update. Economic recovery working group update. I'll take that one. We have a meeting booked for March 16th. I think the meeting might be called Business Park. It's supposed to be called Business Recovery, but so that's on March 16th. We are going to reconvene that working group and just have a discussion. These meetings in the past have been really good at just throwing lots of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Recovery has changed over the past month as things reopen, but it is by no means gone. A lot of the conversations that we're having with businesses are along the lines of, do you need help? Yes. What do you need? We don't know. So looking forward to getting that group back together and discussing, not necessarily just in the short term, but mapping out what recovery help can look like from us over the next year-ish, maybe more. So if anyone thinks they missed that meeting invite, we'll maybe resend that out. But again, that's March 16th, 8:30 in the morning. So it's 2 Wednesdays from now. Any questions, comments on the recovery? McLean?
Sally, I was part of the thread initially discussing the dates, but I didn't actually get the specific invite for the meeting. So if you could resend.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Looking forward to having you on that one. All right. Agriculture zoning working group update. Janet, is that you today?
That's me today. Brett's left me high and dry today. So
winning hockey games, it's fine.
I know, I'll try to spearhead this. So, we had a meeting this past week, and we have a meeting, repeating meeting set for the last Monday of the month. So we started some discussions and looked at, based on Brett's discussions with the county and some of the existing zoning bylaws that are throughout the county. Guelph Mossa updated their zoning bylaw for agriculture and some of their definitions within the last year and a bit. And it did kind of link and mirror the provincial policy statement the closest. So we reviewed that. We were looking at updating, of course, the zoning bylaw for Center Wellington, looking at how to make additional dwellings that are within the provincial policy statement have some flexibility in the agricultural setting to be able to not only meet the needs of succession planning, potentially attainable housing just because of the cost for children, that type of thing, but also mainly for farm workers. So to be able to have some flexibility as we move forward, and workers harder to find, and immigrants coming in and needing a place to live and work. So looking at the zoning bylaw for additional dwellings, aligning the definitions within the provincial policy statement, just to be able to allow, not limit, but allow agricultural businesses appropriately in the agricultural areas. So that was our main discussion, the definitions and being clear what the definitions are in a prime agricultural setting versus a residential setting, because some of the neighboring bylaws, there's a bit of a gray zone, particularly with home industry. So we want to be very clear what that means in the residential setting versus the agricultural setting. So that was our main discussion. We'll be meeting again, as I said, the end of March. And once we have something a little clearer put together, we'll present it to this group. I don't know if anybody else that was on that meeting had anything else to add. Okay.
Any questions for Janet on the update? All right. You can let Brett know you did really well, Janet. No one had any questions. Okay. On to information items, starting with a county update from the mayor.
Yeah, so thanks, Sally. So just going through a few things that the county is doing when it comes to economic development. They have a broader definition of economic development. So some of this, what I'm going to tell you, fits better with our healthy growth, and some of it fits better with community services. But it's all under economic development with the county. So I'll just talk a little bit about the things that I think are more pertinent to this group. Most of you probably have heard that Schneider's is kind of shutting down in Guelph. So one of the roles that the county has is to reach out to those businesses to see if there's anything that we can do to support their employees. So we are doing that, and we're making sure that those employees have opportunities to get new jobs. So the county provides that service to the different companies, and they're trying to make those connections right now with Schneider's and their head office, which is in Wisconsin. I didn't know that. So that's good. On the attainable housing side, I wanted to briefly mention that. So we are moving ahead with an attainable housing public awareness campaign, and that's going to kick off in March. And again, it's to tell stories about the importance of being able to afford to live in the county and telling real life stories of people who can't afford to live here. So it's very powerful. I've seen some mock-ups of what that's going to look like. Real life individuals, and when they can't, when folks haven't given the permission, because some of them didn't want to be identified, which is understandable. They're providing aliases, but they're getting the real stories out there. So really good work. We're working with Letter M to do a real high quality advertising campaign to change the way we see attainable and affordable housing in the county, and how critical and how urgent of an issue it is. So that's good. So we're going to see that to come out this month, and then we'll have to talk about, as a group here, and also with our Healthy Growth Committee, how we're going to leverage what's coming out of the county for the purposes of Center Wellington. We want to make sure that we're leveraging all this good work that's being done. The county is also moving ahead with the community improvement program changes. So we've hired the same consultant as Center Wellington has, and we did that on purpose to make sure that we're working together. And the left hand is talking to the right hand here, and we're moving together. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting is the approach that they're taking is they're going to bring the consultant, which is RCI Consulting. They're going to bring them to the different communities across the county to get a sense of what these communities actually look and feel like, and so that the community improvement program for the county and the individual member CIPs recognize the differences and the uniquenesses in our communities across the county, which will include Elora and Fergus. So they're actually doing a physical road tour with the consultants to make sure that we're identifying the features of our different communities and making sure that the CIP programs that we put in place recognize that uniqueness. So I think that's a really good first step. And so that project is kicking off, and we'll make sure that we keep this group and the Healthy Growth Group apprised of what the suggestions or recommendations are coming forward. And the only other thing that I wanted to bring up is our Food Futures project. So the circular food economy project that the county started in 2020, it was triggered by a $10 million win from the federal government. So that's kicking along nicely. They've rebounded nicely from COVID, and they're starting to do some really good work. So we got a annual report at County Council this past week, and a couple of highlights are that the Food Futures project has been successful in developing 50 new circular businesses, brand new businesses and collaborations in the county, and have identified over 181 of established or expanded circular practices since the launch of the initiative. So we're seeing some good momentum there, and seeing good stakeholders come up and bring some innovative practices and new ways of doing things to the forefront. They were successful in securing an additional $14.2 million in funding to support county work, City of Guelph work, and work within the collaborative community. And one of the success factors is since the beginning of this project, we've been able to prevent 1,769 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. So you're starting to see some real good indicators out of that project. So that will continue. And now that we're out of COVID, I think you're going to start to see more interaction with the stakeholders, live interaction. But even through COVID, they've been moving really well and getting some good momentum for seeing some projects, brand new projects out the door. One of the ways that the county has come to the table is with our new green bin program that's seen hundreds of tons of former waste that was going to our landfill sites being diverted and being reused, and that's huge. And I think we've already thought that we're on track to add 17 years of life to our landfill site. So really good, and that's rolled into this project. So that's my county update.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions for Kelly on the county update? George?
To Kelly, do you think there's some merit for the committee to have an update presentation on those two initiatives? One being the Ontario or the Food Future Project, as well as the public awareness campaign. I have seen the presentation on the public awareness campaign on housing, and there's a lot of, I think, parallels to our township. And it may be worthwhile for this task force to at least get an idea of what's been involved in this project.
Yeah, I think for sure on the food futures, because we're a little bit conceptual on that when I bring updates, because I don't really get into it, but I think it really makes sense for this group, especially because we have the agricultural subcommittee going. I think we need to leverage that project and the money that's flowing into that project for our own purposes. And I think we've kind of just scratched the surface. We're starting to see momentum. So for sure, George, on that one. On the other one, it definitely has to come to healthy growth. Whether we duplicate that here, I'm open to having them do two presentations. That's because I do see the utility in having this group talking about how we're going to get access to workers, and attainable housing is a piece of that. So I'm open to that. If you guys think that that's good for this group, I'm good with that. For sure, for our health, it has to come to our healthy growth.
Christelle?
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Thanks, Mayor Linton. I also want to add, because we are one of what they consider the main doors of delivery of service for the Food Futures program. So the Business Center, during our counseling with and advising services with clients both in Guelph and Wellington County, we're talking a lot about circular economy and getting businesses to really think about the full circle of as they develop their businesses. So, if you're starting a new business, what are your waste practices? What are you going to do about water? What are you going to do about, even your employment practices? I mean, it's a really, and so we're doing more and more of that and embedding that in our consultations and the work we do. So I was so happy to see that they got the 50 businesses, and I can tell you there's so many programs that are involved, and we deliver on different services for that program, and it's just fantastic to see. But it's becoming sort of everyday language and everything being embedded in all the conversations that not only us, but I know the Chamber with the Business Advisory Services, and I know that Rick and his group there too. That's becoming a normal conversation to have with small businesses about sustainability and circular economy. So. It's here to stay.
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, Kelly, I would recommend that we get a chance to look at that. I think one of the things you're going to talk about this afternoon, unfortunately I can't be there, but is priority sites. And a lot of these priority sites pre-COVID, we had talked about discussions about using some of them as mixed use. So where maybe there was a plaza or a store where there was some business created, but also some rental stock on the same site. So if we can kill two birds with one stone on some of those priority sites, I think it would be, that we'd be more in lockstep with the Healthy Growth Committee too.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I like that.
Any other questions on the county report on those pieces? Okay. 8.2. We are going to get an update from Rick from Wellington Waterloo Community Futures.
And my mouse just died. There you go.
We can hear you.
So thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. Good morning, everybody. I think most people know about community or the Community Futures office, but maybe I'll just go quickly through the highlights and then answer any questions. I put a few slides together just so it's easier to talk to. Can we go to the next one? So Community Futures has been around for 15 years. We're one of the youngest Community Futures offices in Canada. The Community Future program was started at 35 years ago. So some of the offices in Canada are much older than us. We cover 9 townships, the rural townships in the region of Waterloo and the county of Wellington. We're a nonprofit. We get funded by the federal government yearly, and we have 5 staff and 10 boards of directors and 7 volunteer mentors. Next slide. We're best known for our the financing portion of what we do, but Community Futures does an awful lot of other work. We have a training program that's run by Tina Heathers, and that is putting on monthly training sessions as well as individual training and coaching. We have a mentoring program that we have had running for about 5 or 6 years, and it's been very well received. We do a lot of economic development, so we work a lot with the County of Wellington and with Yenna Morris over in the region of Waterloo. And so from an economic development point of view, we put about $100,000 a year into economic development projects. This past year, we funded in the region, the rural counties in the region, to do the BRNE study along with OMAFRA. So we have funds to do economic development, and we are always open to ideas to try to take on better programming for the economic development. And then finally, we do a lot of strategic planning. So we help businesses and nonprofits with their forecasting and looking out into the future. Just this past month, we helped the Waterloo Train Corporation that does the tourism train rides. So we help them to look out into the next 5 years and see where they wanted to go. But we do a lot of financing. So maybe the next slide, I'll take you through that. Can we go to the next slide there? We lend up to $300,000 for businesses to start and grow. It's flexible. We would be called a developmental lender. So we take on risks that normal funding organizations wouldn't. We don't necessarily look at credit scores and past history, because good entrepreneurs probably have the worst credit scores going just because they put their every last dollar they have into their business. We look more at the what's the forward looking, see what's the business case looks like, and work with them to make sure that they can build a sustainable business. So we help with build a business plan, work with them for the application. We take them to the financial institution and try to get financing for them. But if we don't, if they're not successful, we can lend the money to them and then help them to get their business going. And we have the fund available at our office. So it's not like we're taking an order and we're sending it upstream somewhere for a decision. Our board of directors makes the decision, and the funds usually are advanced within a month. Next slide, please. One of the other things that we put together with the county is matching the CIP loan. So this is a special loan that we put together. One of the conditions, or one of the things we found was the condition of the CIP loan grant is that the businesses have to put 50% of their money up front, and then it gets reimbursed. So many businesses don't have that flexibility. So we have the program that we put together. So if the county, any municipality approves CIP, they're automatically approved for our loan, and we would give them the full amount of the CIP program. And then when the county provides a 50% repayment, that comes to us, and the business carries the rest of the 50% over a 3-year program. So we want to make sure that the businesses that have a capability to do CIP or qualify for CIP have the opportunity to do it and not be caused it not go ahead because of funding. Next slide. So I just went through that. So really, we follow along the municipal CIP approval. So if the county approves or the municipality approves the CIP application, that person, that business can come and talk to us, and we'll give them the funding with no questions. Next. Training program, we do more of a holistic training program. So it's we do get into the the accounting and so on. We find that there's many, we look at more of the theoretical programs as well. So like coming up now, we're looking at programs that are going to be working with businesses to look at how do you operate in an environment with high inflation, and how do you operate in an environment with supply chain issues and so on. The big one that we're working towards is how looking at cash flow management over the next 3 years, because many of these businesses have taken on a huge amount of debt in the last couple of years, and it's a forgiveness until the December 2023, but 2024 is going to be a real kicker for them because they've got to repay those loans within 2 years. So we're getting them ready now from a cash flow point of view to make sure that they're able to make those payments if they aren't able to repay the loan before that. And then we also, Tina works with the chamber to do some lunchtime monthly sessions. And so we try to provide training wherever we need, wherever there's an opportunity. Next, please. The coaching and mentoring I talked about, so we'll skip that. Next. And then just this is just kind of where we are in our history. Since 2003, we've advanced 637 loans for $26 million. That's into our whole coverage area. I'd say Center Wellington probably receives about 25 to 30% of that, just because they have more of the businesses than the other areas that we cover. This past year, we generally do about $2.5 million a year. So last year was pretty much on track from our regular investing, but we also advanced $3.3 million from COVID funding, which was helpful to keep the businesses going. We did set up a with 10 Cardin, we set up a Food Future loan program where we provided 30 businesses with $10,000 at no interest and 3-year repayment. So that was another loan program that we set up in talking with Kelly's Food Future. So we have been getting a lot of requests for lending or borrowing to do kind of those new agricultural type of businesses. So our number of jobs created is about 4,700 since we started, and the average cost per job is around 5,600. So that's the cost per job created. So if you think of an average job making 30 or 40,000, it probably repays itself in taxes in the first year. And then our loan loss, historical loan loss has been 7%. And we try to keep it around that. So we don't want to be totally reckless with the funds, but we don't want to be a bank either. So we try to keep we're on the risky side. And if we were down in the 2 or 3%, we're probably not doing our job. And if we're doing 10 to 12%, we're probably being too reckless. So 7's kind of a target that we're fitting into that spot really well. And then we do economic development we've done about 1.2 million. So again, about 100,000 a year there, and about 6,800 businesses assisted through our coaching since we started. So I'll stop there and maybe there's questions.
Any questions for Rick? George, go ahead.
Rick, on the last slide, you had economic development projects. I think you listed at 1.2 million over that time period. Can you describe some of those projects? Because I'm just thinking from a township's perspective, how we might leverage something in the future.
Yeah, so well, we funded the BRNE project over in the region. Here, we work a lot with the county economic development department, and so we did put some money into the Food Futures program, so we allocated funding for that. We worked a lot with the county on the immigration, so attracting new immigrant programs. So we funded those kinds of programs. They had, for example, they had a bus tour around to the different communities, so we would provide funding for that. So off the top of my head, I can't think of. I have to go through the list, but generally it's programs that we don't generally do it ourselves, but we would do it in conjunction with the county or the region to do funding. So, but the funding is available, and one of the takeaways for me is if people who are on this call can provide references to people, so people get people to understand that the funding for economic development is there, the funding for lending and business services is there, so that they're aware of it and to take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Any other questions? Bob, go ahead.
Thanks, Rick. The part I wasn't aware of that I think we should be able to leverage in partnership with you is the CIP program. I think the municipality, our municipality, has done an amazing job in terms of how wide that toolkit is, and the discussions, for example, in the priority sites. I just want to confirm, you said that if it's approved as a CIP, then the business automatically can get that amount up to 20,000 as a loan from you pre-approved?
That's correct, yeah. So the intent is that we don't want to be a second guesser on the CIP project.
That's amazing. I think, George, there's a huge opportunity for us to leverage that so that people do invest in the things we want them to from a priority site point of view, and utilize, 2 for $1, if you will, for community improvement. Thanks, Rick.
Okay, the reason that came up was many municipalities had funding available, but it wasn't taken advantage of because the businesses didn't have their own money to do the work before they got reimbursed. So we're trying to take care of that.
Love that program. Kim and then Kelly.
Just a quick question. Does the township, if you go in to apply or question about the CIP, does the township automatically let the individual know or the business know about the community futures loan that's available, George?
It's part of my learning right now. I'm learning 2-3 new things. I didn't realize that little part that Bob pointed out, and Rick. No, I have to start working on triaging this and what's the interface with, and that's part of the CIP review, is how do we interface with the county, let alone Waterloo, Wellington, CFDC. So make sure that potential clients are aware of that provision.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and that's particularly important for, I would say, based on some of the initial inquiries I'm receiving from BIA retailers, both in
Mhm.
Elora and a Fergus. I can't do this. It's a little too expensive for me. But I didn't realize there was a loan provision.
Yeah, because I know we have 2 businesses right now that are looking at doing the CIP program, but they're just waiting to accumulate finances. So this would be very interesting to pass along to them.
Very much so.
Mhm. Thank you.
Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, Kim took my question. It was really the trigger point. And that's one of the purposes behind this group here, is that people are being aware of what others are doing. And I just wanted to also just thank Rick and his team. The county provided $1 million to funnel to businesses across the county for COVID support before the feds moved, before the province moved. Using Rick and the Futures, we were able to get a program out in days versus months. And that's because we leveraged their criteria in providing money, and we provide the money. So kind of vice versa of what Rick is talking about, how they're piggybacking on our criteria for a CIP and providing the funds. We did the other way. And it's just a really good example of how you can work together, not to duplicate things, but to use each other and what we're good at, to make sure that we're getting rid of the bureaucracy as quickly as possible, and helping move money and services and expertise to businesses as quickly and efficiently as possible. And one of the things that does come out to me, George, in this discussion is when we go towards making changes to the CIP, and we should make sure that up front we're thinking about how we're going to communicate that out to businesses. Based on Kim's comment, businesses don't know what they don't know. And so at the end of the day, when we make changes to the CIP and we're going to leverage Futures access to the loan, if we could think about and maybe involve Kendra in this, how we're going to pull that information together in an easy to understand and read document so that people understand what they're eligible for. I think that would be really, really helpful if we could do it in a digital format and a print format. And use pictures because people don't read anymore. I think that'd be really good to get some of this information out.
I agree with you fully on that point. And just as an aside, Sally and I have been talking about, with the variety of different groups at the table, how do we sort of, I'm not sure what the word is, placemat, but how to triage the different organizations. Because I'm getting simple inquiries like a startup. And they want to know about sites. I can help them that way, but where do I direct them towards loan programs? Where do I direct them towards maybe a potential CIP? Where do I direct them towards other types of services, and who's doing what? So we have to think from the client's lens as opposed to our own lens. So that's been, I think it's worthwhile. And then you're right, the communication messaging with CIP.
Could I ask a question that is probably part of the revamping of the CIP? What's the current relationship between county CIP and township CIP?
Well, I think they're very tied together. The counties can't do plans, so that's why their CIP has program at the end. Only lower tier municipalities can do the CIPs by legislation. So the county has chosen to piggyback on the member municipalities' CIP programs and to support them, but they didn't want to duplicate the processes that you identify whether an organization is eligible for a CIP incentive. So they're piggybacking on what the member municipalities, in this case, Center Wellington, does, and the county's portion of it. If you go through the same process, you don't have to go through 2 processes. You only go through 1 process. So the county is leveraging our CIP process to ensure that organizations are eligible for both township CIP funds and county CIP funds in 1 process. And we're using the same consultant when we're doing the CIP work to change our CIPs. We're using the same consultant to do both. So that, and we worked on that very strategically. We're both paying for it. But we want to make sure that at the end of the day, we're putting ourselves in the shoes of the business rather than on our organizations. And so we wanted to be business focused. And I think it's working that way. It's working that way. And I know that George is in contact with the county staff on these things as well. And he can't help but be that way when our consultant is working with both organizations. So they're going on parallel streams.
Thank you. Actually, that really helped me understand. Any other questions for Rick or while we're chatting about CIPs? All right. Second last agenda item, ECDEV update from George.
Okay, in terms of the economic development strategy and regards to the available industrial land option or objective, what we've done is Brett has submitted to SB Law a standard form of purchase and sale. We're asking them to come back to incorporate our design guidelines. These are guidelines that we want to see raise the level of the business park. So that is with SB Law. We also met with the Antec appraisal group just to get a preliminary meeting to get an idea what the appropriate selling price for the lots would be in the business park. In terms of investment readiness, I mentioned to you at the last meeting that Pecuniary and Associates did the first version of our community profile, which was statistical. The second version has come back. Kendra and I are actually, after this meeting, reviewing the final document that we're going to table in April. We've been working through some revisions on photos, statistical information. Be prepared. It's about an 80-page document. It's not meant to be a marketing piece. It's meant to be almost what I want to call an encyclopedia of information on the community. And I really want the task force to look at it to make sure I'm not missing anything in terms of organizations, services. Statistical information is quite interesting. When you see the amount of tables that are being provided, the figures that are in there in terms of statistical trends. It's based on Census Canada information, which will be updated when the new Census Canada information is released in, I think, May or June of this year. But it also has other types of data sources called Manifold, ESME. So really some interesting trends on journey to work patterns, places of residence, population growth. And I think it's useful data when we talk about housing, infrastructure, all of the above. So it'll be an interesting document. It's going to be tabled at the next April meeting. In terms of the industrial land inventory, I have completed the first cut at this. The subcommittee will be doing a demo, how it will be posted on the website, what it's going to look like. Since I started this process 2 months ago, 4 lots have been sold already. So just to indicate how the speed of what's happening in the marketplace. I think I had a total of 12 lots, and now I think I'm down to 8 that I can see that are available. And I want some feedback from the committee. I've also drafted a marketing and communications plan that I mentioned in the last meeting. I hope to table that in the main meeting. It's a pretty lengthy document, about 12 pages. It explains what I'm trying to do in terms of our marketing dollars, our audiences, our target audience, the associated budget items, how I'm trying to create awareness that's coming out of the economic development strategy. On the website perspective, I've been working, as I said, with IT. There's just a proliferation of government programs and services federally and provincially. And I want to load that. And in addition to that, we'll also have a drop-down menu for organizations such as Rick's, Christel's, making sure that their services are listed appropriately. And I'm just trying to keep that current. You can appreciate it's a moving target. Programs are constantly changing. And just, as soon as you get it uploaded, something else, there's a new variable that happens. So it's to get that updated. The mayor mentioned the CIP review. The tour actually has taken place. And I was part of the tour. So we got to explore Elora, Fergus, Harriston, Erin, Palmerston, a variety of different communities, see the different types of projects that have been approved, which ones were approved at the lower tier versus the county. It was an eye opener for me, I must admit. One of the most interesting things for me was the Laura Distillery. I didn't realize the building wasn't there. When I looked at 2009, they literally built a building that matched the landscape. So I couldn't understand that, but now I have a better appreciation. That was a learning for me, how they matched the facade and what they've tried to do to maintain the heritage value, but obviously create a tourism generator, an important concept. So we talked about process a lot. When do I hand it off to the county? And is there a way to make it simplified for the client? And we kept talking about the client's perspective. We took a lot of pictures before and after. We got a flavor of the type of projects. Housing intensification came up a lot, particularly on the second floor of buildings. How do we encourage that a little bit more? There has not been the biggest take up on that. And the general update, I continue to attend the Chamber Biz breakfasts, learning a lot of things, meeting a lot of new clients. And lastly, it says here 26 industrial land queries. I mentioned verbally today, I am 28 on paper, and then I got another 29 they're going to follow up after the meeting. So that was done on March 1st, this report, and here we are, we're up to 29. So it keeps moving forward. And I would say out of those 29, about a third are repeatedly calling me on a regular basis. So they want to know, what's the timing? Tell me about the timing, George. Do I renew my lease for a year or two on my existing property? That kind of thing. So there's a lot of growth pressure. So that's sort of a quick run through of the an update.
Thanks, George. Any questions for George? Neil?
No questions, just a comment, George. I appreciate the fact that you cataloged all this stuff. And once you know what's out there, you're better able to help people find new places and start new businesses. And that was an important stepping stone that we didn't have before. It was we were kind of flying blind when somebody called the township and asked, hey, where can I put a retail operation? Where can I do this? And just by, getting an inventory, you've done a great job that way. And so I appreciate that. And we'll talk at length this afternoon about the business park and how we move that.
Yeah.
Any other questions for George?
Well, as I would say, Sally, you got to know your product. If I could say it that way, from people here on the private sector, you got to know what your product is and what its selling features. And that's what I'm trying to do with the inventory as I move towards the commercial inventory and then land and building. I'm just trying to get an idea of market rents. Where do I fit in the picture? So how do I be different? How does the county or the township be different? And that's a challenge when there's so many players in the field. And so what is unique about our community? And so you have to understand all the attributes. And that's my learning in the last 6 or 7 months, is trying to understand all the attributes here and who are the players and how to leverage them. And thanks to Sally.
For feeding you breakfast on a monthly basis, George?
No, we have regular check-in meetings, and I think
We
that's
do.
very worthwhile. And it learns, it helps you through and navigate the process. And I think that's really critical. And there's just so much to learn. And there's a lot of intricacies.
We had a new member recently, thanks to George. I owe him a coffee. Okay, any other questions for George on ECDev update? Kelly?
Yeah, the only thing that stands out to me, and thanks for that, George. It's great to hear this stuff going ahead, and it's really important. And one of the things that stands out to me is the conversations that you've been having with the county and taking a process perspective and who does what when, what the different roles, responsibilities for. This is something that we've talked about probably about 7 years ago. 6 years ago, about we had to identify what the county does versus what the township does, and it seems like it's coming together now, and it just leads me to a thought. I think this group that we have here is so valuable, and I want to make sure that we're leveraging the group that we have, because I think that there's an opportunity to help people navigate a lot of different processes and a lot of different programs by using the group of experts that we have on this call. And I want us to think about how we can put ourselves in the shoes of some of our businesses out there that are going to be trying to rebuild after COVID, and they just don't know where to turn. And when I look around this room and I see the different levels of expertise that we have here and representatives of different organizations, when we get into the subcommittee that looks at business recovery, if there's a way that we can help businesses by being this forum and to run different business scenarios through this group and figure out ways to help people and businesses rebuild after COVID. I don't know, by bringing a delegation, a challenge to this group about how can I get from point A to point B, because if I was a business owner and I had access to the different programs and services and people on this call, that'd be hugely valuable for me. So I just want us to think about that a little bit to make sure that we're leveraging this group here in a way that helps people rebuild after COVID. Because I don't think, in all my dealings with the township and all my dealings with the county, I've never had a group like this that spans the different skill sets, experience, and organizations that we have here. And I want us to think about how we can leverage that for the purposes of our business getting them moved ahead, because they're going to need it. And so often I hear, I know I have the challenge, I need money, I need expertise, I don't know how to get it. So I want us to think about how we can use this group to help people, because I think this is a really unique group that we've pulled together, and I think the collaborations and the working together we've been able to figure out as a group have been absolutely invaluable during COVID. And I want us to make sure that we're leveraging that as we emerge from COVID. No real action, except I want us to think about how we can actively help businesses by this group. And maybe Peter has a better idea.
Not a better one, but I had my hand raised just before. I was thinking the same thing, Kelly, around that. I like, George, the talk about putting things in the client's lens. How important is that? It's vitally important. It's vitally important that we see the pathways from a client's lens on financing, on help that we can provide, all of these different things. It's so important because people don't know what to do or where to go. So if we can start looking at this stuff and presenting it in a way that is really taking them through the from a retail perspective, it's the customer journey. What's the customer journey from the person reaching out saying, I need help, to the transformation now, what does my life look after we've brought in all of the help that we can provide through this committee? So it's always about a transformation. Where were they? Where could they be? And what is our, as you said, George, your unique selling proposition type thing around how are we different and how can we actually provide them with this stuff? And one of the things that I think, Kelly, you were just mentioning that popped into my head as we were listening, it's like, can we have, or should we have a panel that, when somebody, there's a monthly panel of, whatever, 4 people that basically are there to answer these kind of questions and have something, I don't know how to put it, but kind of like a Dragon's Den-y type thing where people will come in and it's like, you've got this panel of people willing to help. Hit us with your questions and tell us, give us an advance, like we'll have like a 1-page sheet or something of the problems that you want to overcome so that we have a little bit of headline around it. So we've given a little bit of thought about it, but you can come at us and then we're just going to spit back anything that we can do to help those owners through whatever problems they have. And if that could be something like, I don't know how we set this up, a Zoom room or whatever the case is, but basically, and say, we have this panel of experts here to help you for free. They're wanting to help you get through where you are to where you want to be with their knowledge, and it's free. So show up on Thursday morning at 12 o'clock and we'll give you 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And we do 3 of those every month. and help 3 people. I mean, it'd be better than helping 0 people, right? And giving them specific guided information with a panel of people that's going to be there every third Thursday at 12 o'clock or something, so that it's a consistent thing. And over the course of the year, we get through 30 people or 40 different businesses.
I feel like the committee here just got a glimpse of what those recovery meetings look like. I had an Ask the Professionals event that was sort of brewing in my head, but I like the idea of a program better. 2 quick questions on this, and then we'll go to healthy growth. But I think that whole discussion, I jotted down a bunch of notes, is what we're going to start to tackle on that recovery working group. Neil, I saw you, and then Christelle.
Yeah, I like Kelly's thoughts about the expertise that's on this panel and how do we let people know they're aware. I'd like to raise the profile of this committee and let people in the community know exactly what you're doing, what we do as a committee, and how we're promoting things. And one of the things that popped into my head when Peter was talking there was, Sally, you have these breakfast meetings with the Chamber of Commerce, and it would be probably beneficial to everybody to have an Eggs with Economic Development Day, and where this committee is there. And I would suggest that Rick, you bring your people, and Christelle, you bring your people, and the businesses can come. We can do a brief presentation on what the Economic Development Committee has done over the last 3 or 4 years, and introduce the people in the room that we've heard these presentations over time. And we can explain to people what is available in the community, the CIP program. Rick's people can explain, there's loans there, just to have them in the room, and then people can understand who we are and what we do. And then after we do our presentation, they can go and meet the people in the room. And George, we would have people from your department there so that people know who to contact in the township if they're looking to establish a business or if they're looking to grow a business. And it would be a simple breakfast and just let people know what's going on. So I'll just throw that out there.
I wrote down the title, Neil. I will give you 0 credit. Christelle.
Just riffing off both Kelly and Pete and Peter said and Neil said, I love this idea. I think years ago, Guelph Partners Innovation, prior to Innovation Guelph, used to do that. They used to do a Dragon's Den style where these businesses would come in and to get 15 minutes or 20 minutes to pitch. And you had a panel of experts sitting there that would be able to give specific advice, because a lot of these people also want to speak very confidentially. So, you know what I mean? They want everybody else hearing their issues. So I love the combination of that. So you have that place where people can come. I think the key is consistency. And to Peter's point, every Wednesday or every other Wednesday or whatever that is. And that consistent, that people start to know and gravitate that because it's available to them. And then they can sign up or register for these 20-minute sections. I love it. We do the same thing. We've done an Ask the Professional for years, and we always are sold out every time we do it. And that's having access to lawyers and including that, right? We put some lawyers in the room. We put some insurance people. We put some accountants and bankers and the people that can, and, we have all of our other people here. We have Rick, we have Peter, we have you, Sally, we have the business, George, all the business people here in this room too. So you mash that up. What a fantastic support system, and real time. Yeah.
My page is full of notes. I will not sleep for a week now. It'll be all flushed out by the time we meet with the recovery group. Any other questions on that? If not, we've got a few minutes to do the Healthy Growth Advisory Committee update, which I'm not sure who is giving that today. Does anyone have a Healthy Growth Advisory Committee update? I'm not on that committee. Okay.
Kelly keeps looking at the ceiling, hoping somebody else will do it, but you're the only one on the call, Kelly, that's on the committee. So you can repaint your ceiling later, but give us enough.
There's not a whole lot to update. I mean, we're still moving ahead. We had a presentation at the Healthy Growth meeting. I think a lot of people are talking about attainable housing right now, and we have to be pushing forward to making some substantial action. I want us to see at the county level, we're talking about it too, and we're really driving towards doing a pilot project. We do have some minister meetings coming up to talk about attainable housing as part of the Western Wardens Advisory Committee for Western Ontario. We did a multi-minister meeting a month ago to about 6 different ministers to talk to them about a number of things, and attainable housing was right at the top of it. So an attainable housing task force report came out. Association for Municipalities in Ontario just sent out a report on attainable affordable housing. So much has been being written about it. I think we've marinated in the problem long enough. I think we really do have to move ahead on some of our policy changes that we're anticipating. One of the things that I'm most excited about that we're talking about at attainable housing is allowing for a change in our zoning to highway commercial to where it is the right kind of mix to allow for attainable housing and rental units to be built on our sites that are currently zoned highway commercial, which is a huge change. But we really feel like some of those areas are prime for some rentals if they're done right. So that's, to me, one of the areas that we're going to see significant change in. So that's working its way through the process. Again, it's going to come, like, I think there's a recognition that we have to have a level of intensification density, and I talked to Janet about this yesterday, to save us from sprawl, continued sprawl and taking up valuable farmland. We're going to have to allow for some intensification density. We face a lot of NIMBYism when it comes to that. You know, everybody says, oh yeah, we understand that we need to have more rentals, we need to have more attainable housing, but just not in my place. Oh, we understand it's not NIMBYism. It's not suited for this community. Well, that's the definition of NIMBYism. Anyway, we know that there's places that aren't suited for a 4-story rental. You know, we know that, but there are more places that are suitable for that than people think. And so one of the things that we did at the Healthy Growth Committee is we had a map, and Brett put a map up of all of Center Wellington, and it identified a bird's eye view, identified those properties that we thought would be conducive for attainable housing in the highway commercial zones and in other zones and other neighborhoods that are not well developed across Center Wellington. So we looked at each individual property. Brett took notes because we want to make sure that we're not going ahead with policy change when it doesn't really make sense on the ground. So that was a really valuable exercise that we went through. And we went through all of Center Wellington, Fergus, Elora, in between, and identified those pockets where it probably made sense to allow some flexibility when it came to the type of building that happened. And if we can do that, it would provide less pressure on the intensification in some of our more heritage areas. So we're going through that process. It's at the end of the day, hopefully we can get recommendations to council as quick as possible, because you can't wait till you have all the information. You have to go with what seems to make sense, and you know there's an urgent need. So those changes are being made, and hopefully, you know, in the next couple of months we can see things that can go before council. And in those council meetings, we're going to have to make sure that we have viewpoints of all individuals represented as delegations at those council meetings. And I'm hoping that the county's communication effort comes into play, and we have a strong voice of people who can no longer afford to live in the community that they love at the table. And so that we're making these decisions to make changes, we recognize their side of the story, because that hasn't been the way it has been in the past. So things are trucking. I really want us to move to action as fast as possible.
Thanks, Kelly, for that. Any questions? We're at 10 o'clock. Janet, go ahead.
Just a quick stat for the group, following a great discussion that I had with Kelly yesterday. A 5-story building equates to 40 acres of residential lots. So I think that just a quick stat. So I think we need to kind of put some tangible numbers to say, okay, one option is this, 40 acres of houses or 40 acres of farmland, and going up fixes that problem. So I think to try to support the intensification, the resources, the infrastructure, the everything, the attainable housing, it all links together. And I think this group has a great way to help to support that message.
Thanks, Janet. All right, I don't want to keep you guys much longer because I don't want, poor reviews sent to Dawn while I step in as vice chair here. So next meeting is April 7th. Lots of working group committee meetings before then. So we'll have lots of updates. April 7th, 8:30, same as this one. If there's nothing else, going once, going twice, we'll call the meeting adjourned at 10:01. Someone was to write down 10 for the minutes for Dawn. That would be cool.
Don't let the facts get in the way of good stories, Sally.
Yeah.
That's my favorite motto.
And Peter, the comment on the naming of the event program, I'll just leave that to you. You're our naming expert. Neil came up with eggs, so we'll ask you.
Well, yeah, that's why I said exceptional. But I do think when we look at something like this, having an attractive name as opposed to just saying, hey, there's a bunch of economic development people here to help you, just to put that client lens on it. It's like, we're not just a bunch of economic people here to help you. We're actually, I don't care what we call it, but we can come up like the small business accelerator, or, the Center Wellington power panel, like whatever we call it. I do think we could have a name that we could actually market around the fact that we're going to do this every month, if that's what we choose to do.
But Peter, you're not at the recovery group, right? So maybe you and I can have a quick side conversation before the recovery working group meeting.
Sure. I'm heading to Florida in about 10 minutes.
You're going to be in the car a lot. I'm happy to talk to you on the phone.
I'm
Peter,
gone for the month.
Sorry, but your flight was canceled.
Yeah, I'm driving. Good try.
Packing the bulldog. Friends at the border.
Yeah, packing the bulldog and heading for the month of March. But I will be back and forth in contact a little bit, Sally. So if you need to get a hold of me, we can set up a quick Zoom meeting early in the morning some morning.
And Janet just asked a question if we should adjust the time of these meetings.
Don't do it on my behalf. Okay. Everybody's used to these. I'll coach every Thursday morning, and I'll just come in as soon as I can after, like I did today.
They used to be at 9. And then we went to 8:30 for some reason. So I don't remember why. Neil?
Yeah.
I apologize to the subcommittee this afternoon. I've got a conflict that I just can't get out of, so I won't be at that meeting.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Your presence will be missed. But if you've got anything you want to add to the conversation or any issues you have, just send me a quick email, and I'll make sure it gets raised for you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Janet, did you have a question before we leave? Your hand is up.
Sorry, I had it up from earlier, so I'm sorry. I will lower it. Yes. Thank you for noticing, everybody.
Yeah. George, thanks for that 80-page report.